What is up, guys? It's the Phoenix again, here with your second episode of this podcast that I started to do. Today, we're going to go through my top 5 films from Letterboxd today. Can't wait to have you guys listen. Thank you so much for listening. So yeah, the first film I actually have on the list is Parasite, which was released in 2019. I can remember watching this film for the first time and just thinking about how absolutely insane it was. And I think it's crazy that it ended up winning an Oscar back in 2020 as Best Film, and it was the first foreign film ever to win a said Oscar, and I just think that is so inspirational as a filmmaker and as a person who wants to pursue filmmaking. It's very cool to see, if this foreign film can make it, I know I can too. I just think that's super cool that it made it into the Oscars even and was nominated. And watching the different scenes in this movie for the first time, just to see the different scenes, like the scene with the staircase in the basement. I remember watching that and just thinking, wow, this is different than anything I've ever seen before. And just thinking that it was so cool to watch. And I wanted to watch it when it came out, didn't get the chance to, so I had to wait until it had its streaming release to Hulu a couple years back, give or take. And yeah, that's my first film on this list of Letterboxd films. There's about 16 of them that I'm going to go through, so we may be here a little bit. Thank you again for listening. I do appreciate it. The second film I have on the list is Whiplash. This movie came out in 2014. I didn't watch this until recently, actually. I watched it about a month ago, give or take. I remember watching this movie, and as a musician as well, seeing how these films and how these scenes played out was very interesting to see. Just to see the different reactions that J.K. Simmons had in certain scenes, and realize that I may not have the exact same experiences as Miles Teller's character did, but I have had very similar experiences with music teachers over time periods like that who just are very intense. And so to be able to see some of these similar experiences that I've gone through put in movie form into a psychological drama with fantastic music. I'm not a jazz person, but I absolutely loved the jazz in this movie. It was just so much fun to watch, and as intense as it was, I just overall really enjoyed the movie and thought that it was very well made, and the fact that it was a Sundance film kind of ties into my first episode, which was about my experiences at Sundance 2023, and you guys should go give that one a listen after you're done listening to this one. Anyways, I absolutely loved Whiplash and watching it, and it's definitely one I could see myself watching again in the near future. The third movie that came up on this list is The Shining. This movie came out back in 1980, and it was the horror film that really got me into horror films and really made me explore even more than I already had. The first film I actually watched that exposed me to horror in general was The Bye-Bye Man. Absolutely terrible movie. Hated it. But it made me explore what else was out there in the horror genre. And it led me to The Shining, which is super weird because they're two different types of horror movies. And I remember watching this, I was 14, 15, 16, something like that. And just thinking to myself, yeah, I'm really enjoying this. I'm really enjoying the different scenes, and I remember not being scared, but I just remember thinking, man, for this movie to come out so long ago, which it's long ago now, it's crazy how that movie has paved the way for so many other horror movies and so many other movies. You know, and it had its sequel, Doctor Sleep, back in, I think it was 2019, is when Doctor Sleep came out. And I remember watching that and thinking, you know, it's good, but nothing compared to The Shining. And just the amount of love and care that went into that film, it's just so phenomenal to see. And I haven't seen many other Kubrick films to really give an opinion on him as a director, but I can say that The Shining was a very enjoyable film, and it's one I have seen multiple times, and typically I give it a yearly watch around Christmas, winter, because it's a winter film for sure. And the fourth film I have on the list is a docudrama. I guess you would consider it. It's a musical. It was Tick, Tick, Boom, which came out back in 2021, directed by Lin-Manuel Miranda, who, if you didn't know, and I'm sure most of you know this, he directed Hamilton, actually. I watched Tick, Tick, Boom. It was, it was way after it had come out. A lot of these movies I sadly didn't see when they released, even though I wish I would have. I would have been able to join in on some of the hype that was involved in these films. The music to Tick, Tick, Boom, that itself is top 5, top-notch music. I could sing along to it. Fun music overall. Very sad what happened to Jonathan Larson, but really powerful film. Really touches into, you know, even though it was about his life, it also touches in a little bit to the AIDS crisis back in the 80s and 90s, and that epidemic and crisis, and you kind of see how that situation is dealt with in that movie, as well as loss and the loss of his friends, and you get to see his career unfold, even though this happened way back in the 90s, which is weird to say that it's way back now, because now we're in 2023. Just to see his career unfold through this film was just absolutely amazing, and I really appreciate what was done with the film. I really like how it was made. I thought that it was a beautiful looking film. The point where he starts kind of breaking down, you just kind of see him in this stadium almost, and it was just a very wonderful, wonderful film that I really enjoyed watching. Highly recommend you watch it. It's on Netflix. Tick, Tick, Boom. The next film that I have on the list, I actually did get to see in theaters. It was the Elvis movie with Austin Butler that came out last year. Came out back in June. I grew up an Elvis fan. I grew up with Elvis's music, and so to see his life put into film form and it be mostly accurate. Obviously, it's a movie, so some things are going to be, exaggerated, but to see his life on the big screen and see it portrayed by a very phenomenal actor was just very, very... I was very appreciative how they did the movie and how they went about it. I was very, very glad I got to see it in theaters, and I have actually seen it, I think, 4 times at this point. It is one I have seen a lot, and I just absolutely loved it. Now we're going to get into one of my other favorite horror films of all time. I could talk about this movie a lot. I have seen it a bunch. Own most of the movies, actually, other than 2. Is Halloween from 1978. Classic slasher film. Absolutely phenomenal. Really freaking love this movie. It's what got me into slasher films and my love for Halloween and the season of Halloween, and I just really freaking love the film. A lot of fun. The next film I have on the list is Rocket Man from 2019, the biopic about Elton John, with Taron Egerton. I have no idea how you pronounce his last name. I cannot remember. I love the fact that they got Elton John to be on the set during the making of this film. I love that they included him in the making of this film, and as much as, Taron didn't really look like Elton John, the kids they got to play as Elton John as a young kid and young teen were pretty freaking spot on. I remember watching this film, watched it back in 2020 during the pandemic. That's when I really gained my love for film and started to explore tons of different films. I remember watching this biopic because I had just seen Bohemian Rhapsody not that long before and was like, I'll watch this movie, see what it's about. I think that overall Rocket Man was a way better biopic than Bohemian Rhapsody ever was or ever will be. As much as I enjoyed Bohemian Rhapsody as a Queen fan, Rocket Man just so much better than Bohemian Rhapsody. The cinematography to the film and the way that they cut certain scenes and did certain scenes, I just think was really well done. I think it's a really well made film. Highly recommend you watch it. It's not streaming anywhere anymore. It used to be streaming places. Sadly, it's not anymore. So, the next film I have on my list, it's the first Disney movie to, weirdly enough, show up on the list because I'm a pretty big Disney fan, actually, is Hercules from 1997, an animated Disney classic, if you will. I love this musical. I love the music to it, even though it's not very accurate with Greek mythology. I love that it's kind of a fictional take, even though Greek mythology is fictional. I love the different take on Greek mythology as a whole, and the whole Hercules character, and the casting was absolutely perfect. It's just a fun Disney movie, wonderful story about, one of the songs is Zero to Hero, and so I'm going to be very cliche. It's a story of a zero who became a hero, and I just really enjoyed it. Really thought it was a fun film overall. The next film I have on my list is Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. This movie released back in 2007. Very dark musical, holds up with my favorite genre, which is horror movies. I absolutely love horror films. I try to see pretty much all the new ones that come out each year. I remember watching Sweeney Todd for the first time and just thinking, wow, I freaking love this movie. I love that they made it horror-esque but included music, and I know it's originally a Broadway play, and most people absolutely don't like the movie, but you know what? I did. It's one of my 5-star movies on Letterboxd, so I don't care what other people think. I really just enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. I liked the way it was shot. I liked the different storylines, and just overall really good. The next film I have on my list is Hairspray from 2007. I watched this movie with my fiance. I don't remember how long ago I watched it. It was back in November or something like that. I watched it for the first time, and so inspirational to see this story play out and see how they made this story. If you don't know what it's about this overweight teenager who auditions to be on this dance show, and this dance show is like people who are skinny and fit a certain stereotype and who are white, because this movie also takes place during the period of segregation. And to see this play out on the screen, this chick who, you know, looks like me in certain ways, be able to make it onto this dance show that she wanted to audition for, really just, you know, very touching. And to see how they deal with the racial segregation of the time and all of that. Just a very inspirational movie and very touching movie. Highly recommend it. Next movie on my list, Trick or Treat, 2007. Watched this movie 2 years ago, actually, back in 2021. I remember wanting to watch it for the longest time, not being able to because I hadn't found a way to. And then HBO Max came around, and I think it was on HBO Max for the longest time. It's not anymore that I know of, but it used to be on HBO Max. And I love how it's an anthology film. Not normally an anthology person, but I love that it's an anthology film. I love the different storylines and the characters, and how they ended up connecting them all in the end was absolutely crazy. And it's a fun Halloween film that I wouldn't necessarily watch it, you know, as a family film, because it gets kind of violent. But, you know, it's a fun little Halloween movie. Highly recommend it. Okay. Next movie I have on the list is probably one of the heaviest movies on this list. That goes without saying. This is going to get into my Christian walk and my faith in Jesus. It's The Passion of the Christ. That's kind of a weird film to have as a 5-star on a Letterboxd list, I know. But I was at a point in my life when I watched this when I was just starting to find God again, just starting to find Jesus, and to see a portrayal of the torture and the death of Jesus was really hard to watch. And I'm not one to cry during movies. This movie had me bawling. I'm not gonna lie. I absolutely cried during this movie. I cried watching it, and I tried to do it as I'm going to try to start doing it as like a yearly thing around Easter, because it's just to help remind me of the sacrifice that was made for me on that cross on Calvary. And as gory as the film was, I know that that's what happened, and it was a very, very humbling film to watch and know that there was someone who died for me that I could have eternal life. And I highly recommend watching that film, even as a non-Christian, just because it is so inspirational, because everyone could gain something out of it. Next film on my list is Haunt from 2019. I watched this movie on Shudder a few years ago. I've seen it like 3 times at this point. It's a haunted house gone wrong type film. And it has a wonderful female lead. I don't remember who plays the lead in that movie, but I just remember watching it and cringing at certain parts and hoping that it all works out in the end for these characters, and for most of them it doesn't, as it is a horror movie. But I just really got into this movie and got into the story and just had a lot of fun with it, and a lot of fun watching it, especially around Halloween. Next movie I have on my list is Jesus Christ Superstar from 1973. Very controversial movie to have on there because a lot of people absolutely hate that movie. I don't know why, but they do. Well, I had this film rated at 5 stars, and I watched it Easter time a couple years ago because I was told, it's a very sacrilegious film. Don't watch it if you're a Christian, this and that, blah, 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 by so many different people. And I was like, I'm going to watch this for myself and decide myself. And then it became my favorite musical. Still is my favorite musical. And I like how it was different in the sense that there was 0 dialogue in this movie. It was straight singing for like 2 hours, and you get into all the music. It's phenomenal to see how they played this out like a stage play, but also a movie, and they kept it retro but also modernized it, mixed a little bit of both of those in there, and so super fun to see. Next film I have on my list is Mr. Holland's Opus. My goodness, I have not seen Mr. Holland's Opus in a fat minute. One of my favorite movies of all time. It's another music movie, but it deals with a music teacher. Not nearly as intense as Whiplash was, but still deals with certain subjects that could be considered kind of intense, so to speak. It's about this high school music teacher who strives to write music and wants to write music, but he ends up becoming a teacher and does that for years. And as a music person, just an absolutely lovely film. I loved it. I loved the way that it was made. I loved Richard Dreyfuss in it, and I think he did a phenomenal job as Mr. Holland. Glenn Holland was his name in the movie. I love the different decades they go through and how each story pans out, and it was just an overall very, very touching story. Very, very fun to watch, and overall just really amazing movie. The next film I have on my list was actually a Sundance film that I saw while I was at Sundance last week, I think it was. I watched Magazine Dreams, a very intense movie about a bodybuilder, and I mentioned that one in my first episode as well. How intense this movie was. How this movie wasn't your normal psychological drama type film. It had the same kind of esque as Whiplash did, but was totally different, as it was about a bodybuilder and Whiplash is about a jazz drummer. Magazine Dreams deals with these concepts of depression and anxiety and not feeling good enough and looking up to your idols and those idols letting you down, and mental health awareness, and it just handles all of that not necessarily in the best way, as the main character doesn't do the greatest job handling their own mental health. But the ending scene, or it's closer to the end, it's not the exact end, but it's closer to the end, we see his outlook on everything change. Something happens and we see him change as a whole and as a person. You see him doing things that he normally wouldn't do and doing things differently. He changes everything because of the different events in this movie. And so, as intense as it was also a very, very touching film. Very beautifully shot movie, gorgeous cinematography, great actors, great cast. Just absolutely loved this movie. Some honorable mentions I realized I, in fact, did not put on this list, but I know that I enjoyed them enough that they could for sure be up there. Phantom of the Opera. I don't know why that film's not on my list as a top 5. Overall, really enjoyable musical. You know, it's not the Broadway production. Nothing will beat the Broadway production, but it's a musical. It's fun. Fun little musical. I also have Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter is a 4-star film, which is weird because I remember watching that film and absolutely freaking loving it. Love seeing Abraham Lincoln killing vampires. Very interesting concept that we haven't gotten since that, to my knowledge. It was historical fiction. You go through and you see his Emancipation Proclamation, but then you also see how everything with his family plays out. And you see the family dynamics, and you see the way that they deal with him growing up and becoming president while also having to deal with killing vampires. Really lovely film. Highly recommend it. Let's see, what else do I have on my list here? I can tell you my least favorite movies that I've seen. I could have made that another video, but no, you know what? I'm going to do that here. Least favorite films I have on the list. Very controversial. Gonna probably get a lot of hate for this if anybody watches this, but Hamilton. Absolutely freaking hated Hamilton. Didn't think it was very good. Don't understand the hype behind it. Watched it way after the hype when it released on Disney Plus. Lin-Manuel Miranda, I'll give him credit where credit is due. Phenomenal music writer. Hamilton just was not for me. I'm sorry. Another very, very hot take and very controversial opinion. Zack Snyder's Justice League. Yeah, a lot of people love this movie. No, I didn't. Feel like it's 4 hours I will never get back on my life. I feel like I wasted 4 hours of my time on this movie. Just hated it. The Bye Bye Man. I mentioned this film earlier. I don't understand the hype behind this movie. I really don't. I don't understand why people like it. I just couldn't get into it, even though it is the reason. Giving it credit where credit is due. It is the reason that I explored the horror genre and became a horror fan. So as much as it sucks, I love that it helped me to want to explore and help me explore and get out there and branch out and see what else was out there in the horror genre. And yeah, so as much as I hate it in that aspect, it's a good movie. Kind of a weird opinion, I know. Harley Quinn Birds of Prey. 1 star for me. This opinion, kind of a hot take. I'm not one to be against feminism or anything, but this movie was just straight up girl power, and it wasn't the good kind. You want good girl power, go watch the Harley Quinn series on HBO Max. That series does a good job of handling girl power. Birds of Prey, not it for me. The movie was just not very enjoyable as a superhero movie, which is what they were going for. I just don't think that it was done correctly. I think there was things that they could have done better, and it was just not it for me. Movie, not surprising. Also 1 star is Lightyear. I don't understand why people like this movie. I don't understand the hype behind it. You want a good Buzz Lightyear movie to watch that's animated? Don't watch that one. Go watch Buzz Lightyear of Star Command. That animated film is absolutely amazing. I remember watching it when I was super young and just thinking, oh yeah, really, really good. Have it rated as 4 stars. Buzz Lightyear of Star Command. Seriously, go watch it. Don't watch Lightyear. Lightyear sucked. Please, don't put yourself through that. I just absolutely loved it. Hated Lightyear. Anyways, guys. Hopefully my content is going to start getting better. I'm still super rusty on this whole podcasting process. I have no idea what I'm doing. Still learning the ins and outs of podcasting and how it works and what to do, what length to go. So if you do end up listening to this, any tips, if you are a podcaster, would be fantastic. Because like I said, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just starting to get into this. I want to do film critiquing as a career, and I figured this would be a start. So yeah, I'm not great at it, I know. I kind of drone on. But that's okay. You live, you learn. I'm still learning how to do everything. And still learning how to make good content. And hopefully, in a little bit, I can maybe work on, getting people to do the podcast with me and doing episodes with me, so it's not just me talking, because it's one of those things. And another thing I have trouble with is trying to think of the words to say, and so some things kind of, may not come across as how they're supposed to or how I mean it, because I'm just looking for words to say as I put these podcast episodes out and YouTube videos out. Still working on my blogging and all those skills as well, because I'm really not great at it. For a film major and a music major, I'm weirdly not as creative as I'd like to be. I want to be able to write music, and I just can't, and I don't know why. Anyways, that's not the point of this podcast episode. The point of this podcast episode was to go through all of my films, which I have rated as 5 stars on Letterboxd, which I did in fact do. I want to thank you so much for listening. I hope you do enjoy this episode. I hope that, maybe some of the words I say can inspire you to, maybe make film or watch film more. Again, thank you guys so much for listening. I do appreciate the feedback. If you decide to leave any, it would be much appreciated. And thank you again, guys. Have a great night, and God bless.